Now, I will say another big thing that's incredibly important is I think one of the top two priorities for a lot of CEOs is one, building trust. Number two is also relationship building. That's really up there in those top three priorities for every CEO to do on behalf of their company. There are strategic ways that you could be doing this more at scale to really press the gas. I encourage leaders when they start posting online to have the mindset to be more of a media outlet than a marketer with what you're doing.
Welcome to another episode of The Rooted Founder. I'm excited today. I'm joined by Paige Velasquez Budde, the powerhouse CEO and partner at Zilker Media, an Austin-based agency known for building people-driven brands. She's led campaigns for best-selling authors and Fortune 500 brands, and she's also the author of the upcoming book, The Strategic Business Influencer: How to Build a Big Brand with a Small Budget, which is coming out in November of 2025. Her work is grounded in the belief that the future of marketing doesn't lie in louder ads or shinier funnels, but in strategic influence rooted in authenticity and trust. Today, we're diving deep into her research-backed framework, the concept of the influence ID, and how leaders like you can align your identity with your visibility to drive real, measurable business results. So, Paige, I'm excited to sit down with you today and really talk about strategic business influence and why it's so important right now that we shift our mindset around it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Staci, for having me on. I'm excited for this conversation. Now's a really crucial time for a lot of leaders and a lot of brands. There's so much that is changing in the landscape, not only with the way consumers are looking at brands and viewing brands, which we'll get into, but also just what's happening with AI and how rapid even discoverability and search, just those basic foundational things that we've known for the past, decade or 2 decades or so, is just completely kind of starting to flip on its head quite a bit. And so this is why, strategic business influence, this concept is so important for leaders to understand and start to act on. Because if you're on the forefront of this, you're really able to create not only clear differentiation for your company, but also it help accelerate speed of trust. And that's the big thing just in the landscape today that we're seeing. The first study that really came out about this was in 2022. A Gallup study, and it's come out every year since. Edelman's Trust Barometer has underscored this every year as well. But trust with institutions and organizations is at an all-time low, and it continues to decrease. And so what we're finding is companies that are leading only with their corporate logo, only with corporate marketing, a lot of audience members, a lot of consumers, when they see that logo, they're immediately conditioned now to feel like they are being marketed to and that they are being sold to. So in order to create that differentiation and that on-ramp to trust, what we're seeing is if we're able to position a leader alongside the company brand, so not in front of, not behind, but right alongside it, we're able to build an on-ramp that kind of acts like a Trojan horse, where you're able to focus as the leader on teaching or educating, entertaining, really focused on that rather than selling. And that allows for that speed of trust. And so we've seen that be a huge shift. We've also seen, just as you have a growing business, as your business is scaling, a lot of times you're going up against much bigger companies that have a lot heftier marketing budgets that we just can't match. at that time. And so we have to think about, how do we differentiate ourselves quickly? How do we win in that environment? And a lot of times that's leading with your most unique asset, which is you and your people, and making that just a little bit more visible. So came up with this idea and coined this term around strategic business influencer, because it's really all about leaders who are bringing strategic visibility to the activities that they're already doing behind the scenes that are driving results for their businesses. And we're just looking to bring the right visibility to those in order to scale that impact moving forward.
I love what you're saying about the speed of trust, because I work a lot in organizing to scale businesses, and you can't scale chaos, but you have to scale trust. So what you're doing with the strategic business influencer is actually scaling trust through the person that is the leader, that then has a far greater reach. From your vantage point and the work that you do, what is the difference between the strategic business influencer and a personal brand?
Yes. So the way I've defined it is, a strategic business influencer has either one business or a few initiatives that they are on ramps back to. Your personal brand, a lot of times, is serving just your one initiative or you as a person, but it doesn't have any impact a lot of times to a company or to an entity. Strategic business influencers, they're business leaders first, a lot of times really servant leaders that have built their businesses and successful careers on being a servant leader. This is the next stage, the next era of what that looks like in a modern CEO role. And I think that's where people get it wrong sometimes, is when I say the phrase, like when we started doing this work, we would say personal branding, and that immediately created an image in the leader's mind of somebody who's ego driven, who's saying, hey, look at me, a personality, a celebrity. And building that, a lot of times for these servant leaders, is completely inauthentic. That's not who they are. And it's going to turn away their audience a lot of times. If you are a business leader, what you do impacts entities, impacts different initiatives. You've got to think about each move you make online and off, how that's going to impact and how that's going to drive results. And so to me, that's really the difference between the two.
I think it's important because same avatar as you, servant-based, mission-driven leaders, and the idea of tooting their own horn or bragging about anything that they're doing feels really, really inauthentic and the opposite of building trust with themselves. Yet behind the scenes, they're leaders, they're experts, they're parents, they're thoughtful, yet translating that online is a mental shift. So in your work, how do you navigate? They don't want to be online. They just want to do their work. And then now it's like, no, you have to be online. How do you overcome that hurdle?
Yeah, it's so funny. I was on a call this morning with about 15 CEOs who are in another country across the world. And they all run very, very successful businesses. And that was the number one comment is, I've intentionally not been online for so many years. And I hear that so often, especially from the servant leader. And what I encourage them to think about is, a lot of times when I sit down with CEOs, they like to tell me I'm not online. I intentionally haven't been online. And the reality is, because you're in the role that you are in, you are online as a leader, whether you like it or not. You are heading a company that, is online, is public, people can find, there's Google, there's AI to search. Oftentimes the question isn't, are you online? It's, are you doing everything you can to control that first impression that you have online? And that's what it really gets back to is the first impression of you as a leader. And for leaders to understand, that's no longer happening in person. That's no longer happening over the phone. your first impression as a leader, which also serves a lot of times as the first impression of your business as well, is happening entirely online, either on page one of Google when somebody searches you, or on an AI platform like a ChatGPT when somebody prompts your name ahead of a meeting or ahead of seeing you speak or whatever that might be. And so that's really the thing is understanding it is your job now to do as much as you can to control what that first impression is instead of letting others control that for you. And that mindset of online's not for me, or I don't need to spend time here, is almost a detriment because you're going to let everybody else control that. And I guarantee you 99% of the time, if you were to search your name, if I were to do that, something's going to come up and it might not be what you want representing you and representing your company. So that's really a lot of the work that I do is helping leaders understand what is that first impression that we want to create? How do we control that as much as possible? And then how do we get people ramping onto either your company or whatever other initiatives you might want to be supporting as well?
Okay, so I'm the CEO and I've overcome the mental hurdle that, okay, I need to build a strategic business influencer brand online. Is that when you take me through your influence ID protocol?
Yes, that's exactly right. So that is the next step is once you've decided, yes, I want to take control of what my first impression is as a leader and what my first impression of my company is, then we get into this influence ID framework. And I liken this framework almost to a passport process. And there's even, I've even had fun with it and kind of created throughout the book imagery of a passport. But there's so much that happens in that process that's very similar. And this framework just gives you a strategic framework to just define how you show up as a leader, how you earn trust faster, and then how do you differentiate you and your company. And so as we think about getting a passport, we first start with the application. And that states where you're coming from. And that's step number one, is just to really look at your history. What's making you credible? What is your story rooted in? Why are you doing what you do? And distilling all of that information from your application down into an ID that clearly shows who you are and where you've been. From there, a lot of times the next step is to get that ID verified. You have to make sure that everything that you have on there is the right information, it's credible information, other people are verifying that. And then you go into kind of looking at where do you want to go moving forward? And that's typically the last part of the application from a passport standpoint that you fill out. What destination stamps are you looking to obtain? And so I encourage you to look at 5 years from now, 3 years from now, 1 year from now, kind of that EOS framework. And Staci, you probably have even better ways to look at this with the work that you do, but really look at what are those stamps that you want to collect along your journey. For some leaders, that's going to be a certain award that they want to win. For others, that might be a new business venture they want to start, a board seat that they want to have, an exit, an acquisition, whatever that might be. Kind of plan for that so that as you go on this journey, as you start to create a strategy around this, you have clarity on where you want to go when. That helps you focus in your time on best and highest use. So really looking at those sections, I will say within that, one of the most important pieces, this is kind of like that step 2 of looking at how do you distill where you've been into one really concise thing, picture of an ID, is doing this process called a brand audit. And that is that kind of active look at when you do the Google search, you do a private browser search, and you see what's actually coming up on page 1. You input yourself on a private browser search into AI platforms. I like to do a few. I like to look at GPT. I like to look at Claude. I like to look at Gemini and just see what is coming up. Where are they pulling from? And number one, is it the information that I want representing me? And number two, what can I do to control that? Do I need to look at what's posted on my LinkedIn? Do I have that all filled out? Am I using every possible opportunity to accelerate speed of trust and reinforce the credibility with my ID? And that can be as simple as looking at your LinkedIn banner. And I'm honing in on LinkedIn because that's normally what comes up number one for a lot of executives when we search their name. But that banner at the top, there's so much missed opportunity there. I land there all the time and see these beautiful, photos of cities, cityscapes, or I see beautiful photos of mountains, which are gorgeous, but it's doing nothing for you. So really thinking about using that as an opportunity to build what we call authority by association, which is where are logos that you've been featured in the past, whether it's through media, awards that you've won, clients you work with that people are already familiar with, that they can associate with your brand to help accelerate speed of trust if that's the first time they're landing on your page. So just getting as granular as that. There's also activity kind of within this influence ID to make sure you're discoverable. And what I want you to imagine is, I go to dinner tonight with a journalist, and I had just met you today, Staci, and they're covering, she's covering an article where I think you're just going to be an incredible expert. And I give her your name. I don't remember your email address. So I just say, hey, this is her name. You need to look her up. So that journalist goes home, and the first thing she does, because she's on deadline, is open up her laptop and Googles your name. And the question I want you to ask is, which I know you're good on this, but for others listening, is if that were to happen to you and that journalist were to Google your name, could you be found? This is happening all the time with referrals. A lot of people probably refer you by name versus your business name. This happens with investor referrals, potential talent referrals. So you've got to make sure that not only your company, but your name as an executive reflects the first impression that you want to have for yourself and your company.
So I appreciate everything you just shared, and I've only been online the last 2 years. So for me as well, I was so much of what you were describing as your avatar, which is the person behind the scenes, the servant leader, not wanting to be public, all of those things. And then I felt the call to really have a platform for the message and crusade that I was about. Because if I'm not reaching the people I want to reach, then the message can't land. And so it was a stewardship opportunity for me to be a good steward of what I felt like I was being called into. And I had to overcome all of those mental hurdles that you talk about as well, which is what's my strategy? What do I say? How do I navigate it? But so I want to just double tap, and I think you've already kind of talked about it, but I feel like you could dive deeper. Why do you think it's so important now that these behind the scenes silent servant leaders start taking a stand online?
Yeah. Well, it's really all about, I think from a business perspective, number one, how do you scale results faster? So just to give you some thought, I think a lot of what's going on with AI right now is a big barrier to entry when it comes to content online has been knocked down with AI. There's more content, more noise than we have ever seen because it's a lot easier to produce, right? And I'm not against utilizing AI at all. In fact, I think there are really strategic ways that you can be doing that, but it's even harder to differentiate. Now, a few things to understand with algorithms. And when it comes to social media, your personal profile is also going to get a lot more weight in an algorithm than a company profile. The way, especially social media channels are set up is it is a pay-to-play game, and they want companies to pay for that exposure, but they naturally, organically weight personal profiles. So if you're the one that's leading that initiative on LinkedIn or whatever platform makes the most sense, you're going to be a lot more successful and get your company a lot further for, less investment. Now, I will say another big thing that's incredibly important is I think one of the top two priorities for a lot of CEOs is one, building trust, as we talked about, which trust hasn't changed, but how you built it changed with the landscape. But number two is also relationship building. So whether that's with prospective clients, partners, vendors, potential employees, investors, that's really up there in those top three priorities for every CEO to do on behalf of their company. There are strategic ways that you could be doing this more at scale to really press the gas. One of my favorite ways to use content is a reason to reach out and build a relationship with somebody. And so I encourage leaders when they start posting online to have the mindset to be more of a media outlet than a marketer with what you're doing, and kind of split your content into three categories. So category number one is what we call you-driven content. So you-driven content is connected back to your intellectual property. It's your journey. It's your story. Oftentimes, a lot of leaders see that this is the content that gets the most engagement because you're being a little bit more vulnerable. Now, the caveat to this is if this is all that you're posting, you're not going to get a lot of traction over time because people don't want to come back to that. It's almost as if you had a newspaper and you're filling it with opinion pieces or advertorials only. So I would really encourage you to think about you-driven content to be about 15 to 20% of what you're putting out there. Category two is what we call news-driven content. So news-driven content is all about thinking of what is on the top of your audience's mind, either at a particular time of year because it's seasonal, or you're looking at what is going on in the news cycle today that your audience is worried about, they're paying attention to, and how can you as an expert help them analyze that? If you think about it as leaders, every morning, if not all day, we're looking at what's going on in our industry. We're building analysis about what our plans are, what this means for our clients, how we're going to lead through this. All I'm asking is you to take a step further and actually share that, what you're already doing, a little bit more publicly online. What you'll see is, one, it'll bring a lot of inbound interest, but two, LinkedIn, especially if you're using that platform, they're the only platform that has a human editorial team. They are consistently looking for leaders in different industry verticals to promote on the larger platform for trending news articles. A lot of people want to learn more from you as an expert than generic mass media. That was understated with Edelman's latest trust barometer. 74% of respondents said that they perceive individuals that were like them, more of that peer level, they perceive their trust level to the same as, traditional authorities like a doctor, a lawyer, politician, whatever that might be. So that was very powerful just in that shift there. People want to learn from people that are like them or that they identify they can trust with. So that's category two. Category three is my favorite. It's often the most important for CEOs, and that is relationship-driven content. So thinking about who are the 25 most important people for you to be building relationships with over this next year for your business, and then build your content strategy around that. I'd encourage leaders to start an interview series. This can be a written interview series. This can be a podcast. This can be a video interview series. But what it does is it takes a traditional, what we would call sales to prospect interaction, which is the cold outreach. Hey, I'm going to be in New York. Let's grab lunch. Or, hey, I want to pick your brain about this, which we all get that email, 50 times a week and can't hit delete fast enough. And this flips it. It becomes more of a peer-to-peer interaction where you can have a conversation where you both bring expertise. And it's a very delightful experience for both of you. Oftentimes, to that type of ask where you ask somebody to be a guest, you're most often going to get a response. But two, once that interview goes live, they're going to want to go and share that onto their platform, bringing a lot more visibility back to you. And the content strategy becomes less of a lift for you because it becomes more about them and less about you. And you can have a 30-minute interview and get, months worth of content whenever you segment that out into 1 to 2 minute clips. And so that's what I encourage leaders to think about, is just thinking through These are things that they're already doing most of the time. Let's just think about more strategic ways to do it.
I love this framework. And I'm learning so much. I'm like, I need to get on LinkedIn more. But so another hurdle is I don't have the time to do this. It's going to take more effort. And I'm curious, what do you think people are wasting their time and money on right now that they could be shifting those resources to something more productive?
Wow, that's really thoughtful. I would say the biggest thing that a lot of people are wasting time and money on. So two things. Some that have gone down this path and they've tried to build thought leadership. They've tried to build their brand as a strategic business influencer. Oftentimes they're trying to do too much. They're trying to be on all the platforms. They're trying to keep some sort of frequency up online. And what I encourage CEOs with is that's not realistic. That's not authentic. Unless you know that the person has the ability to have an army behind them, keeping up with all that. I would encourage CEOs to think, what is highest and best use? So who am I trying to connect with and where are they? For B2B businesses, oftentimes LinkedIn's the place to be. If you're in a space that's a little bit more visible, a little bit more consumer driven, you might think of other social media channels, right? But I would encourage leaders to pick one or two channels and pour their efforts into that. I would worry less about frequency and more about quality. So how is this connecting back to business results? Is this going to help drive relationships? Is this going to help reaffirm our thought leadership on this breaking news story? Just really looking at things like that, because algorithms shift so constantly that I can tell you today, hey, 3 posts a week is the magic number for LinkedIn, and that's going to change 2 weeks from now. And you probably know this as well, especially on Instagram, that algorithm is constantly changing, and you should watch those things. But as a CEO, your time is finite. So you have to be really clear with how that's utilized. Another thing that I see more company money wasted on is really digging their heels into outdated traditional tactics. If you're not realizing that discoverability for brands are changing, the way you have to build trust once they're in your sales pipeline and funnel is changing, and SEO is absolutely changing. You have to really think about, are you discoverable in this new world, in this AI-driven world? Because Google's taken suit. It's all about more, meaningful intent behind. It's less keywords, less backlinks. We've seen really PR take a huge stand in this new era as being absolutely critical, because what's happening, and I think this is for the better, a lot of AI platforms aren't only, weighting keywords. It's more about how can they reaffirm trust, credibility, and authority. And that's by being listed on several other websites. If you're just talking about yourself on your own platforms, that's not getting you very far anymore. You also have to have others reaffirming that. So having a strong PR strategy and how you show up, where you're showing up, whether it's micro media, which are industry trade publications, podcasts, YouTube videos, and also some big banner media as well with high domain authority, is helping to build and reaffirm that trust in the AI algorithms.
Oh, you are just so brilliant and wise. I can't wait to read your book. Everyone listening, go pre-order it on Amazon. We'll put the link below. So I want to switch this a little bit.
Sure.
You're so wise, but you also had your own entrepreneurial journey. So I'm curious, you built your people first career. You built it that way. What keeps you grounded when things are so high speed, high noise, and especially in the world of marketing where things shift so quickly? How do you navigate that as a leader?
Yeah. Agency world is crazy, and the marketing world is ever changing, as you said. I try to ground myself and root myself in a couple of things. One being my broader mission as a whole. One being our culture and how our team shows up and our team loving what they do and having fun doing the work that we do. And also just really looking at, our mission is to cultivate community for our team, our clients, and our home. And one thing that we've always said from 2017 when we started the company was that mission is never going to change, but the way we do it throughout the years will. And so that's what really rings true to us, is that's kind of our guiding star, especially when we're looking at how do we show up, as marketing evolves, as branding evolves. And that really is what's rooted in our culture as well.
I love that. Staying point on the North Star and letting the how shift as technology, marketing, things evolve. What do you think marketers will cringe at in 10 years that we celebrate right now?
Oh gosh. I think they're going to cringe. I think they're going to cringe. Social media advertising, I think, is gone. I would say back when I was, kind of building my career on the digital side, was like the heyday of social media advertising, where it was just like a gold mine on Facebook and all of those platforms were emerging. I think that's going to be really cringeworthy because people aren't going to trust it anymore, right? We're going to have to build more authenticity, more trust, because consumers are getting smart and realizing that those ads are, prompting them to buy. They're being marketed to, they're being sold to. Another thing is, our team was talking about this today, was just the indications of the AI written content. We laugh because a lot of us with a PR background or journalist background love using the M dash. Like, we were brought up using the M dash, and now it's like, don't use it because everybody's going to think you're writing with ChatGPT because it's a dead giveaway. So we feel a little like, oh no, we're going to have to change all of our writing. But, little things like that, I think might be, cringeworthy a few years from now looking back. But, all in all, I also think that the first wave, that was more of the personal branding, has already kind of become that, but will continue. You've got to root yourself in being more of you. And that's really what's going to drive success.
I love that you said that. And in my work too, people come to me when they are hitting a ceiling in their business. Mm-hmm. So they are overwhelmed, stressed out. I call it frazzled, and their business feels scattered. And they feel so disconnected from their self. Like, I started a business for freedom, but I'm trapped in the very thing that was designed to create my freedom. And I'm curious, inside of your own work too, do you find that part of what you help people through is reconnecting to their most authentic self?
Absolutely. It is so cool, the work that we get to do when we sit down with executives, and especially going throughout the influence ID process. It's almost therapeutic in a way sometimes. We actually, part of this process, how it's broken down in the book, is actually doing strategy interviews. So kind of 360 interviews with those that are closest to you and asking some really interesting questions, because it's hard to see yourself sometimes. All of us as leaders, we've probably been through the branding process for our corporate brands and our companies, and it's very similar, but it's a lot more challenging when you're doing it for yourself. And so what we use is kind of this 360 approach to help us get there and help us see things that we don't. And sometimes it's just, a lot of times it's really beautiful for leaders to be able to sit and reflect on that, because we just don't often do that, right?
It's beautiful. What you just said, I summarize in, you can't see the label inside the jar.
Yes.
And
I love that.
Leader, there's something so magical and magnetic about how you operate. You're doing a lot of things, but your essence and your being is just vibrating at such a light way, and you don't always see it, and people don't always recognize you for it either.
Right.
So it's probably also really encouraging to their soul to be like, I'm an influential leader. I'm a powerful leader. I have something beautiful here to offer. And it probably boosts their confidence even in the journey of becoming public online.
Yeah. And it's so funny. I've spoken with some of the most amazing leaders that you can think of. And we start this process and they said, I don't know if I have anything to share. I don't know if anybody cares what I have to say. And I'm going, oh my goodness, there's so much to learn from you through your experiences and how you analyze things and how you're leading in your industry. And so it's just bringing that out and building that recognition that I think is so beautiful in terms of a process, and that we get to sit down with leaders and think about not only their company strategy, but how they're integrated into that is just really cool.
So if the book, The Strategic Business Influencer, were secretly a guide to spiritual leadership, what would the hidden message be?
So if it was a guide to spiritual leadership, is that what you're saying? Yeah. I think the message there is really digging in on the impact that you want to have at the end of every single day. What is your calling? What is your mission feel? And having some discovery around that. And then how do we bring that to commission? How do we share that? How do we get others talking about that? And that's a lot of the book is, it's not only there's only so much you can go out and vocalize. The real power is getting others behind the mission and talking about it alongside you. Mm-hmm. How do you rally that? So that, I would say that would be, the spiritual leadership part of it. That for me was a much bigger calling, even to write the book, was I'm only going to have so much impact. And hopefully we have a lot of impact working one-to-one with our clients and their companies. But I was just trying to think of a way, how do we go one to many as much as possible? And this was really the heart behind the book.
Mm-hmm. I love that so much. So if you had to start over and only had relationships, no followers, no funding, how would you rebuild your brand?
I would do a lot more of the relationship driven stuff on the front end. So I would involve as many people as possible in the content, whether it's showcasing them, sharing case studies about them, interviewing them. I would do that from the jump and let that be a natural way. That's something that we do a lot of now, but that wasn't the case when we first started the company and the brands. There's just so much power behind the ability of being able to involve others in what you're doing and building relationships that way. So that's what I would supercharge from the very, very beginning.
Oh, you just gave me an idea. I'm excited. I was thinking it would be really cool on the Rooted Founder if I did a client series and I could interview the clients on the podcast.
Absolutely. Yes. I think that would be brilliant.
Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you to you. You are brilliant. Oh, so as we wrap up, what's your definition of success?
My definition of success is accomplishing that impact at the end of every single day. For me right now, that's serving my team and creating a team and culture that we can be proud of and serve one another in and watch one another grow. So that's what I want to do. And then, with the book, I'm kind of shifting to, adding to that impact and looking at how many leaders can we impact with this message in a way that they're able to mobilize their mission in their mission fields. And I think that I know what's going to happen is going to be so much more beyond what I can imagine. But that's really kind of the success for me is, am I doing something every day to try and make that happen?
I think the world is ripe for this type of thing. And it's courageous leaders to really step into that authority online and step into that mission field. And I think having a playbook like your book to help people navigate it is such a gift. And also just being able to witness people as they emerge in it and see them as they emerge in it is also a gift, because there's so much healing community in that.
Absolutely. And that was the most fun I had writing the book. Is, spoiler alert, it's not a lot about me. I had the opportunity to interview some incredible CEOs from all walks of life, and then study some really famous CEOs. And that was the really neat part, was hearing their story, hearing their process as they went through Influence ID, as they kind of started to make this connection. And these are everyday business leaders in very niche, specific fields that, you know, we all can relate to as entrepreneurs. And just seeing how they've gone out and dominated and differentiated and been so smart with how they've built their brands, that was just really fulfilling, was having an opportunity to sit down, hear their stories, and then write those stories. So I am very grateful for those entrepreneurs just being willing to be part of that mission and sharing, so that others can learn from it as well.
I wasn't going to ask this question, but I feel like it's helpful, because how many businesses hit 1 million? It's 1%, 2%?
Yeah, it's yeah. And the single below 5%, I know that.
Yeah. And then of those, I think 1 or 2% are female owned.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Even rarer.
Yes.
And I think that people on their climb to hit that 7-figure mark put a ton of pressure on themselves. And because they put so much pressure on themselves, it can paralyze them. And they can see all these other people, oh, you're so smart, or, oh, you did this strategy, or, oh, this happened. And I'm curious, from your vantage point, working with a lot of CEOs, I'm sure you saw a lot of School of Hard Knocks. And what character trait, or what discipline, or what habit did you see or witness that you think is helpful for the people on the climb?
Yeah. You know, number one, I would say through a lot of these CEOs and their stories, it was just pure clarity, number one, of where they were going, and then just ruthless relentlessness, and just having that ability to work through, lead through, come up with the next pivot, keep going, because they knew where they were going. They knew the mission. They knew what it looked like to get there, and painted that picture really clearly for themselves and their businesses. And then also just having the ability, a lot of them talked about, you know, it wasn't just them, it was getting, of course, the right teams in place so that they could level up, and that they were able to fill in where their blind spots were. But, you know, so many of these entrepreneurs came from a background where that was their upbringing. They had to be relentless. A lot of them, you know, first generation in their families to go to college, you know, that's my background as well. And just having that ability to kind of know where you want to go and ride the waves. And a lot of them also talked about, when they went through their Influence ID process, when they started positioning themselves alongside the business, how they had to be okay, and how they realized, I just need to be me, you know, and they may have spent too much time trying to come off a certain way, because that's what the industry was like. I interview a lot of women who are in very male dominated industries, and that's one thing that they said is like, I just need to be upfront with what they're going to get when I walk in a room. I think that was so beautiful, is that's what stood out. And, you know, a lot of women, just speaking for women, some of them even said in my interviews with them, it took me a long time, because I thought me talking about these things, me being more visible, me sharing my expertise, was me not being humble. It was me, you know, being boastful. And I just was very uncomfortable with that. And I needed to put my head down, because that's what we do. And when they realized that if they did it in ways that wasn't boastful, that was very humble, but strategically visible, the amount of results that they saw for their business, the wins that they saw for their teams, what that did for their employees, that ripple effect, that's when the light bulb went off for them. And so I thought that was really beautiful. A lot of the entrepreneurs that I interviewed are serial entrepreneurs. They've been through exits where they built their first business without any of their brand, and they had to start from ground zero upon that exit. So a lot of them talk about why they realized, even in the midst of that exit or after that exit, why it was so crucial to be building their brand alongside their company so that they weren't starting from ground zero every single time.
I resonate with everything you just shared, and I'm sure you resonated too with it when you were doing it for yourself. And I think clarity and conviction, when you are convicted that this is your calling, this is what you are meant to do, that allows you to have a level of tenacity when it does not go as planned, because it's not going to go as
no.
And you're going to step in it, you're going to fall on your face, you're going to be embarrassed, all of the things are going to happen, but you're going to get yourself back up and keep going. That has truly been my journey personally, as well as it sounds like most CEOs. I don't think I've ever met a CEO that it hasn't been their journey. And when you're young, you don't always know what your conviction is. Sometimes it comes through trial and error, where you climb a ladder or you achieve an award or you do a thing and then you realize it wasn't actually the thing. So I'm curious in the work too, is if you got to a level there with some of the CEOs where they realized the clarity, when they did the influence ID, the clarity on really their mission got deeper or more rooted.
Yes, absolutely. And it got them more forward thinking, not only about the business objectives, but where they want to be. And what's beautiful when we look at the influence ID is one of the first things we do is look at what we call a brand wheel. And the concept is when you think about your brand, think of it as a wheel. You are the hub of that wheel. And there are different spokes and initiatives coming off of that. And one might be your current business venture. Another one could be a future one. It could be a board seat, philanthropic role, alumni that you're connected into, being a mother, a friend, whatever that might be. And the beautiful thing about us as leaders is we're multifaceted. So it's not like a company brand. We're not pigeonholed into one thing. What makes us more relatable, what makes us more trustworthy is that we have all of these things that we're initiatives back to. And so having clarity that it's not just we're going here, but, I want to make an impact because I want to start a new venture that dovetails into this, or I want to start a new philanthropic foundation that focuses here, or I want to exit because I want to build a life that focuses on X for my family. Whatever that is, that's really the beauty, is it does become a lot more rooted. The conviction becomes a lot more real beyond just the day-to-day business. And that, creates a lot of clarity, but it also creates where's their time highest and best use.
Yeah. In my work, similar to yours, once they get to that seat of the rooted, or the seat of the sacred, I call it, you can do it anywhere. You can do it when you're sitting on an airplane talking to the passenger next to you. You can do it when you're in line at the coffee shop getting your latte. You can do it anywhere. Yes. And because we're so talented and skilled, we get to also do it in business. We also get to do it in media. We also get to do it online, from stages, from books, all of the things. But that thing will follow you the rest of your life because it is
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely.
And yeah. Doing such deep work. I love it. All right. So what projects are you excited about that people can follow along with you, and where can they follow along with you?
Yes. So a few things I'm excited about. One, the book, as you mentioned, is coming out in November of 2025. So I'm really excited about that. One thing that I've done that I think is new, I haven't even mentioned this to you yet, Staci, is I've taken the influence ID section because I think it is so crucial. I don't even care if you buy the book. Download this section. I've kind of taken it off from the book and made it a little bit more workshop style into a free workbook. So all you have to do is go to my website, which is Paige Velasquez Budde, Buddy spelled with an E at the end, .com. And all you have to do is share whatever email you want us to send it to. And then we'll send that out to you. It's 18 pages. It walks you through in depth each step of building your influence ID. So that's one thing that our team's been working on. We also have a Spanish translation of the process as well, which is really exciting. But I just felt so strongly that this was something that, I wanted to make incredibly accessible, and my publisher was so amazing in letting me do this free workbook for everybody. So that's what we've been working on. We're really excited about that. We're also doing some really fun stuff at Zilker Media and continuously sharing, case studies that we're seeing. So you can check us out on our website at zilkermedia.com.
I love all of this. I'm going to go download the Influencer ID little 18-page thing and do it myself. Yeah. And I hope everyone listening does the same thing. We'll put all of that in the show notes. It was so lovely, Paige, to have you and deep dive on your brilliance and the ways you're helping CEOs really get their voice out there and help have the online space be a mission field as well. So I appreciate you for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Staci. And this was such a joy, and I learned so much from you. So I'm grateful for this opportunity.
Same. Thank you to everybody listening. I hope you go download the Influence ID, which we will link in the show notes, and do that workshop. And when you do, go find Paige and I online and tag us and tell us what was meaningful and what aha moment you got from it. And we hope that you build a strategic business influencer brand online that really represents you, because it is the difference maker, and we will be rooting for you. Cheers, y'all.